for Luba. The calling card of the Omsk Musical Theatre has been performed on stage for almost 2 decades. All terms and conditions of the genre are met. Consistent obedience of the music score to the dramatic action. Historical opera, the elderly husband, the lyrical heroine, the villain, the leading man and lover, who is approximately 17 years old. All characters are conventional, but according to the authors, the story is based on actual events. It is not an overly complicated story, but it is exceedingly kind and sincere. It features real-life characters that actually existed on the planet. These people had done a lot for Omsk and Russia as a whole, not to mention Kazakhstan. The play is called Square for Luba, the legendary center of local cultural life in 1852. The main characters are Gustav Hristianovich Gasfort, governor of Western Siberia, Lubov Gasfort, his wife, Ayganim, the great sultana, and Chokan Valikhanov, a cadet at the Siberian Cadet Corps, a musical melodrama in 2 acts. Chapter 1. Acquaintance. A descendant of Genghis Khan, the great-grandson of the mighty Ablai Khan, son of Sultan Chingiz, Sultan Muhammad Kanafi. In this scene, 2 of the main characters meet, Luba and Chokan. To mark the departure of Governor General and his army to the Kazakh steppe, the Kapustins hold a ball in their house. The atmosphere is homey and easygoing. There are only close friends in attendance. A relative of the Kapustin clan, teacher Karl Gutkovsky, brings with him a cadet of the Omsk Corps, a youth of noble Khan blood and extraordinary abilities. So far, the plot remains faithful to the real historical events that took place. This whole area is called the Makarinsky Vorstadt. This is where the Kapustin's house used to stand, where Valikhanov used to live. Valikhanov became a frequent guest in their home. He had no relatives in Omsk. In the last years of his study, he made friends with his teacher Gutkovsky, and afterwards, whenever he was on a leave or vacation, he dined at his house and at the Kapustins, praising delicious homemade dumplings and cakes. Valikhanov was one of us. Both households treated him with familial warmth and affection. The Kapustins' residence was a literary salon, the gathering place of the most educated people in the city. Here you could meet artists, writers, scholars, travelers, poets, and various unwitting wanderers. One of such unwitting strangers was the exiled Fyodor Dostoevsky. During holidays, this house was also often frequented by Ekaterina Kapustina, brother Dmitry Mendeleev, future legendary chemist and then only a gymnasium pupil, a rascal and a failing student, who was only 1 year older than Chokan. Naturally, it was easy for the boys to find a common topic for discussion. Moreover, both Chokan and Mendeleev had a shared fascination for the Orient. It is possible that the Kapustin's house was also frequented by the governor's wife, Lubov Gasfort, but there are no actual records confirming the assumption. According to the legend, the romance started in the absence of a husband. Gasfort was in love in the military campaign far from home, and Chokan was there to protect the lady's honor. Mr. Collegiate Assessor, you're a scoundrel. He hit a man in the face, someone who was giving unwanted attention to Lubov Ivashkevich. The latter demanded satisfaction and challenged Chokan to a duel. Chokan came to the duel, but dueling was a prohibited practice at the time, and when the governor found out about the violation, a great squabble erupted, but the matter was resolved. The character of Ivashkevich is also based on a real-life person, an exiled Polish historian. A few years later, Valikhanov spoke of him in his letters with hostility, calling him out as one of the gentlemen who conspired against me and took bribes. However, the duel itself was never mentioned, even though, according to Chokan's contemporaries, he was not always an easy man to be around and had many enemies. His eyes shined with acute intelligence, they looked like 2 pieces of coal, and his thin lips were always curved in an ironic smile, which made him look a little like Lermontov or Childe Harold. He was a witty conversationalist with a wicked sense of humor, and I have rarely encountered another person with such a razor-sharp tongue. The young cadet had an idol. Chokan even did his hair like his favorite poet. Sarcastic like a spoiled aristocrat, a romantic, a dandy, there was something tragic in his appearance. Lermontov's characteristics suited Valikhanov rather well. But not in everything. Chokan was more like Pechorin, and even then, only to some extent. Both Masha Kapustina and Gutkovsky's daughter Ekaterina described him a handsome man, mentioning his striking resemblance to Lermontov in their memoirs. Chokan was fascinating to the ladies of Omsk. First of all, because of his unusual Eastern appearance, but also because of his chivalry and the fact that he spoke fluent Russian. According to Potanin, Valikhanov had an aura of mystery about him. All of this combined created a heady and powerful mix, and it drove women crazy. The memoirs of his Omsk acquaintances are filled with recollections of various social events where Valikhanov was the center of attention, charming all the ladies in attendance, acting like he was in love and reading poetry. In one scene of the play he recites one of Lermontov's poems. My heart began to sing when I first met Luba. When she looked at me for the first time, she's the only shining star.
Мой взор она манит всегда, мои мечты она влечет и с высоты меня зовет.
Chapter 2. Truth and Fiction. Coming out of the fortress, one can't help but notice a neat young grove called Lubina, which stands on what used to be a swamp. The grove was named after Gasford's late wife, who's remembered around these parts with respect for her intellect, kindness, and a warm heart. In the middle of the 19th century, this was a popular gathering place among Omsk residents, sandy pathways and benches. The grove was cut down in 1905. Not a single tree has survived. All that remains of it is a beautiful legend about Luba Gasford being fond of taking long walks here. According to Omsk folklore, Lenin Street's regarded as Lubina Avenue, a sculptural composition of the late 20th century. Madame Gasford, I shall sit down, for I have something to say to you. The fact is that the author of this sculptural composition did not have Luba's photograph, so he sculpted her image relying wholly on his intuition and imagination. Several years later, this photo was discovered, revealing the striking resemblance between the sculpture and Luba herself. Thank you, madam. The girl was well educated and came from a prominent family. Luba's grandfather was a scientist and an architect, her father a privy councillor and a writer, and her brother a composer and author of the state anthem God Save the Tsar. Luba was 30 years younger than her husband, Gustav Gasford. His governorship considered it the golden age, a military doctor and veterinarian, a hero of the Borodino battle. A lover of science, a kindly old man, whimsical and eccentric, he regarded himself as the king of the steppe and wanted to commission a monument to himself in Omsk. A monument to his wife was erected instead. She was a fascinating woman, and she was admired by many men. In January 1851, instead of Gorchakov, Gustav Christianovich Gasford was appointed the governor of Western Siberia. He arrived with his wife. We can assume that Luba, like everyone else in the Lvov family, was musical. She played the piano and sang, but in reality very little is known about Luba and her life in Omsk. The character of Luba is the epitome of purity. She's the perfect character for the author to portray his dreams and ideas about love.
Оптимальный для того, чтобы воплотить свои мечты, свои представления о любви.
They love each other but found themselves separated by insuperable obstacles. In the play, the romance develops quickly. Having realized that he is in love, Valikhanov goes to his native village to see his grandmother Ayganim and inform her of his inability to marry the girl she had chosen for him. Why are you bringing shame on our family? We will be bad-mouthed to cross the steppe now. People start saying that the Valikhanovs do not keep their word. You have embarrassed your fiancé with your refusal. The two of you had been betrothed to one another since you were 7. When he leaves, she flies off into the steppe as well. A fleeting glance at Chokhan says it all. It conveys everything: love, pain, and everything else. There really was a scandal caused by his breaking his engagement to the Sultan's daughter. Valikhanov himself wrote to his friend, poet Maikov, "I learned that my intended bride was in love with my brother and wrote him the tenderest letters." My parents were confused and horrified. My own son defying his father's will. How can it be that it is I who brought him up like this? My father grumbled, disrespecting me and his mother at our old age. Mother started saying that she had wasted her milk on me. Indeed, with the Kyrgyz point of view, it was a display of scandalous ingratitude, and my behavior was scorned by all. But how could I have done otherwise? But this story happened much later, in 1862. Grandmother Ayganim was no longer alive. Chapter 3. Legend. Over the past 2 days, this is the third one. There were denunciations, letters and rumors spreading around the town. Omsk disgusts me with its gossip and intrigue, wrote Valikhanov in his letter to Dostoevsky. This was written a few years later, when the Omsk scenery had changed somewhat. Chokhan was no longer a cadet but an officer. But it is highly unlikely for the habits of a small provincial to have changed drastically. Most likely there was still a lot of rumors surrounding the old governor and his beautiful wife. Governor General proved himself to be above idle gossip. He neither rebuked his wife nor persecuted Chokhan, and yet everything still ended in pain and tragedy. Luba died and was grieved by both Chokhan and the governor. Moreover, after his wife's death, the governor brought Chokhan even closer. This is only speculation and the facts of life. Luba resided in Omsk for only a year and died of consumption in 1852. Another legend suggests that there was a long-distance romance via correspondence, but the girl never received any of his letters. Chokhan painted Luba's portraits, sent her letters, but his letters were intercepted and never revealed to the public, thank God. They were destroyed. According to another version, the letters were preserved and placed inside Luba's coffin where she was buried. We believe in a different version. We believe that the letters were burned. The governor's grief was boundless, in reality, but he soon married for the third time. His new bride was a young woman called Nadezhda Lvova, and she was related to the late Luba. In 1853, Chokhan Valikhanov graduated from the Cadet Corps and was appointed an adjutant to Gosford. After 2 years of service at the request of Gustav Christianovich, Valikhanov was prematurely promoted to the rank of lieutenant. The governor's patronage is evident, which is more than can be said of the alleged love story. There is no serious evidence supporting this theory. No archival documents confirming the existence of the romance were ever discovered. One can assume that Chokhan was in love platonically. It is very tempting to believe in the love story, because after all, in his later years, Chokhan Valikhanov was frequently in love with women who were older than him. First love, a young cadet, and the governor's romantic wife, a whimsical interweaving of truth and fiction. However, Chokhan guarded the secrets of his personal life so piously that all of his love stories have remained a mystery to this day. Whether or not it really happened is not for me to presume. Times change, people change, but true love is everlasting, and it will always be so, for as long as there is love, there will always be life.